Hello everyone and welcome to Simplilearn's YouTube channel. Today we'll be taking you through the jQuery basics tutorial. This tutorial will cover all the essential jQuery concepts like what is jQuery, jQuery selectors, events and jQuery effects. By the end of this tutorial, you guys will get a basic idea of jQuery and when to use it. So before we begin, make sure that you are subscribed to our YouTube channel and press that bell icon to never miss any updates from Simplilearn. So without any further delay, let's get started. Today we are going to talk about jQuery. We will go through a brief about what jQuery is and why we use it. Before we move on to the installation part, let's talk about what is jQuery. Introduced in the year 2006, when John Resig, a web developer, became frustrated with the issue of cross-browser JavaScript. He found it so complicated that he decided to develop the JavaScript library of his own to overcome this problem. That same library is known as jQuery today. So jQuery is an open source, fast, tiny, and rich feature library that makes it easy to interact with HTML documents, and it allows its users to manipulate and traverse DOM, handle events, animations, and Ajax in much simpler ways with an easy to use API that works in almost all modern browsers. In a nutshell, jQuery revolutionized the way of using JavaScript to interact with HTML documents. So let's move ahead and see how we can include JavaScript in a HTML file. So here we are in the HTML file. We have created an entirely new folder for this. We'll save all the jQuery related files in this particular folders. We have two more folders here. One is for the images we'll be using in further videos, and the other one is to save the jQuery library file, and we have a HTML and JavaScript files over here. Fine. Now there are two different ways of including jQuery in a HTML file. We can either use a CDN for that or download the jQuery file and save it somewhere in a system, and then we can use it later. So the former way needs an active internet connection, and for the latter one, the internet connection does not matter. So let's download the jQuery file and then we'll see how to use jQuery. Fine. We'll move to the jQuery website. So go to Google and write jQuery.com. This will take you to this particular website. This is the jQuery website we have. You can see over here the size of this jQuery file is just 30 kilobytes. Really small, right? To download jQuery, click on this download jQuery button over here. The current ongoing version is version 3.6.0. and the previous two versions, which are 1.x and 2.x, no longer receives update patches. So if you are in 2021, then it's not worth using those versions. Click on the button and it will redirect us to a new page. Fine. So click on the download jQuery button. So here you can see we have different jQuery versions. So you can download the compressed version, the uncompressed development version, the map file, or you can also download the slim build. So what happens in slim build is it excludes the Ajax and effect modules. For now, what we are going to do is we are going to click on this download the uncompressed developmental jQuery version 3.6.0, and you can see we have some code written over here. The code looks a bit familiar, right? It's written in JavaScript only. There are more than 10,000 lines of code. So this is basically a library with code written for events, animations, and many more things. Now press Ctrl+S and save the file in your system. We'll keep it inside the jQuery folder and change the name. We'll keep it inside the jQuery folder. We'll go to desktop. Here's a jQuery file. We'll keep it inside this jQuery folder and we'll change the name to jQuery only. We'll remove the version name from here. Save it. So the file is downloaded and you can check it by going through the folder in your system. The file is saved. So let's move back to the VS Code and try to use this file in a HTML document. To include this jQuery file in a HTML document, we have to follow the exact same steps that we follow with JavaScript files. Use the script tag and write type and src and we are good to go. So let's include it here. We'll include the jQuery file at the bottom after the body tag because we want the HTML file to be rendered first. So what we'll do is we'll write here after the body tag script src is equals to. So what we have to write here is we have to write here jQuery. We have the file present inside the jQuery named folder. We'll write here jQuery.js. So this is the path of a jQuery file. We'll write here type is equals to text slash JavaScript and we'll close the script tag. We'll again do the same thing, but first let me close this for you. And now what we'll do is we'll include the JavaScript file as well. So we'll write here script and src is going to be jq.js. So this is the name of a JavaScript file. We'll write here type is equals to text slash JavaScript. Fine. So we have included the jQuery file to our HTML document as well as the JavaScript file as well. Fine. We are done with setting up jQuery. Let's go through a small and exciting example of using jQuery now. We'll discuss the syntax in the upcoming videos. You don't have to worry about it. Just giving you an example of what jQuery is capable of doing. So if you guys remember from the previous videos wherein we used JavaScript for fade in and fade out animations, we were fading in and out an image on a button click, right? And we had to write 10 to 15 lines of code for those two tiny tasks. So what we'll do is we'll do the same thing with jQuery in just one line. Let's find out how. So first thing first, what we'll do is we'll add an image. So we'll add an image to a HTML file. So here what we'll do is after this h1 tag we'll write here img src is equals to images slash jq.png. So this is the path of our image wherein we have saved our image already. We'll write here alt is equals to js and we'll use the id attribute. So let's say the id is img1 for this image. Next up we'll add a button as well. We'll write here button and we'll do the same thing. We'll write here on click. It will call a JavaScript function. So let's say the function name is func1 and we'll write here the button name. Fine. So let's say the button name is fade. Save it and here you can see we have an image over here. We can resize the image by using image height and image width property here, but let's leave it for now. And we have a fade button over here. You can see the fade button is not working. It's just a fake button for now. So we have been doing all this stuff for quite some time now, right? It's easy. The most straightforward task in HTML we can say. We need to define the function func1 now to make the image fade in and fade out on a button click. So what we'll do is we'll move to our JavaScript file and we'll write here function func1. So this is a function and then we have the body of this function. So that's simple. What we'll do is we'll write here dollar inside brackets. We'll access the id attribute. So we'll write here img1. Before that we'll write hash and after that we'll write here dot fade toggle and this is a function and we'll write a semicolon. So that's it guys, we are done with it. You guys might wonder about what we did here. So let me explain guys. So this $sign over here is called a selector and it is used to access an element from the HTML document. We'll discuss everything about it in the upcoming videos. So for now, just think of it as the document.getElementById method we were using in JavaScript. It has the same functioning. Then we have a function named fade toggle. This fade toggle function is already defined in the jQuery file, which we saved earlier in our system. This function fades out the image if the image is there on the screen, and the good part is it also reverts the picture if we click on the button again. Isn't it interesting? we don't have to write lengthy code for such small tasks. So let's find out how it works. Save it, go to the browser and click on this fade button. See, the image is gone. Click on the fade button again and here it is. So guys, this is what jQuery can do in just one line. The set interval method we were using previously also has an alternate here in jQuery. We have to write the time interval inside the fade toggle function and that's it. What we have to do is we have to write here inside the fade toggle function. So let's say we are writing here 3000 milliseconds. Save it and go to the browser. Here we are. Click on the fade button and see the magic. Easy and worth using, right? So I hope you guys understood all of this for now. Now, before we wrap up this video, let me show you guys the second way of including jQuery in a HTML file by using CDN. So we have to do the same thing again. So go to jQuery.com again and click on the download button. Scroll down and you can see here it says using jQuery with CDN. A content distribution network or a CDN is a distributed network of proxy servers and their data centers. It provides high availability and performance by distributing the service related to end users, provided that the user has an active internet connection. So click on any of them from wherever you want to download. For example, we'll click on the cdnjs.cdn. So we'll click on this and it will take us to a new website. Copy the link from here with script tags. So if you click on here, it will say copy with script tag, right? So what we have to do is we have to copy the link from here with the script tags and go to the JavaScript file, place it in place of script tag here. Now what we'll do is we'll paste it here instead of this script tag. Now we have written over here src as cdnjs.cloudflare.com and this is the whole path, and then we have integrity, cross origin, referral policy and all. Fine, save it now. Go to your program and let's see if it's working or not. Click on the fade button, wait for 3 seconds and it's totally working, right? So in today's video, we came across an introduction to jQuery. I hope you guys understood it. We are going to discuss selectors in jQuery. We'll go over some particular types of selectors in this video. We are all aware of accessing an HTML element in JavaScript. We have 3 different methods for that. The get element by ID, the get element by class name method, and the get elements by tag name method. So these 3 methods we have been using for a long time. Apart from these 3 methods, we can also use query selectors for accessing CSS selectors, right? So let's do the same task using jQuery today. Now, selectors allow us to manipulate or access HTML elements as a group or single element in jQuery. The syntax for accessing any particular element is so simple that we don't have to remember all of it. Just go through it once and you might remember it for life. All we have to do is to use a $sign and pass the ID or class name with particular symbols to let the jQuery file know the type, and that's all. The question that arises here is how it is different from JavaScript. If we are doing the same thing in jQuery, then what is the real difference between these two? So guys, jQuery selectors are used to find or access HTML elements based on their name, ID, classes, types, attributes, values, and much more. In simple words, jQuery provides us the flexibility to access any element in different ways. jQuery selectors are based on CSS selectors and it contains some custom selectors as well. So let's start by going through the simple syntax and you guys will get an idea of what selectors are in jQuery. What we'll do is we'll create an HTML element with specific ID first and then we'll try to access that element. So what we'll do is we'll move to the body part and we'll write here div ID is equals to, let's say, div1. So we are creating a div tag. Now inside this what we'll do is we'll write some paragraphs. So we'll use the p tag for that. So we'll write here p. Let's say we are writing here this is paragraph 1. Let's add another paragraph here. What we'll do is we'll again use the p tag and we'll write here this is paragraph 2. Fine. So what we'll do next is we'll copy this whole div tag and we'll paste it again. Basically what we are doing is we are creating two div tags here. Fine, we'll write the ID as div2, and here we'll write this is paragraph 3 and this is paragraph 4, just for your convenience guys. Now what we'll do is we'll create a button and we'll call a function on clicking that button. So the same part with JavaScript as well. What we'll do here is we'll write here button, and here we'll write on click. So after this we'll write, let's say we are creating a function named func1. This button click will call this function, and let's say the button name is click me. Fine. What we did here was simple. We have used 2 div tags and 4 paragraph tags over here. Now we'll make some styling changes here in both the div tags so that they'll look different from each other. We have already added the style sheet here. We have the link as style sheet and the href is style.css. So this is a CSS file. We'll make some styling changes to our div tags from here. So before that, let's save this program once and check the output. So here are our paragraphs. We have paragraph 1, 2, 3 and 4. So all of these paragraphs are present inside 2 different div tags. We are not able to see those div tags, but we have used them here. So what we'll do is we'll make some styling changes to make them look different. So you can see the click me button is not working as of now. Now what we'll do next is we'll go to style.css and we'll start styling those div tags. We'll write here hash div1. So we'll style div1 first. We'll write here margin as auto. Let's say text align at the center. Border we are going to add. We'll write here border as 3 pixels black and dotted. Fine. Next up we'll write here font size as 50 pixels, let's say, and the background color is going to be, let's say, caded blue. Fine. Next up we'll write here height. So let's define the height of this div tag. We'll write here height as 300 pixels and width as 300 pixels. Fine. Now we have to write one more thing here. The position is going to be relative and save it. Here you can see we have a div tag over here. So you can see the font size is quite large. What we'll do is we'll reduce the font size here. Let's say the font size we are going to write here as 30 pixels. So now you can see it's working totally fine. We have 2 paragraphs inside a particular div tag. We have 2 paragraphs inside a container. What we'll do next is we'll copy this piece of code and we'll do the same thing for the second div tag. Right, we'll write here div2, save it, and here you can see we have 2 div tags over here. Now what we'll do is we'll change the color of this div tag. Fine. Let's say the color of this div tag is yellow. Save it, and here you can see we have 2 div tags over here. Right here margin top as 10 pixels. Fine, save it, and here you can see they are not touching each other now. Now we are done with styling our div tags according to our need. You can check it by going through the web page, and here you can see we have both our boxes present over here. So let's move on to the jQuery part now, and we'll try to make some changes in the styling of these div tags using jQuery selectors. So we'll move to our JavaScript file. First of all, we'll access both the div tags here. We'll try to make some changes in both the boxes using the element name. So we have to create a function named func1 here. So first of all, we'll do that. We'll write here function func1, and inside the body of this function, the next thing we have to do is to change the style of these div tags, right? So the jQuery syntax goes like this. We'll define the syntax first. So it goes like $, then we have the element name. So a $sign followed by an element name. Now the JavaScript alternative for this statement will be document dot get element by tag name, and then we'll write here the element name. Fine. So this is the alternative of this particular statement in JavaScript. You can check if it's right or not. So you can see here it's showing some error because we haven't written the original element name here. So it's totally fine. Now once we are done with this part, we have to mention here the action as well in the jQuery syntax. So the actions here may be predefined, or we can customize those functions as well. For now, we'll use the predefined actions. So let me tell you the syntax first. We'll write here action. So action is going to be a function which will perform certain tasks in the div tags. Fine. Now let's move on and write the actual code here. Now in this particular case, we are accessing the div tags here. So we want to make similar changes to both the div tags, right? What we can do is we'll write here dollar. Inside this, we'll write the element name inside double quotes, and after that we'll write the action name. So we'll write here dot css, and inside css we'll write here background color, and after this we'll define the color here. So let's say the color is orange, let's say. So let's define them inside single inverted commas, and we are good to go. Now what we did here is we selected both the div tags. We have to put the element name inside the double quotes. Then we have the action as CSS that will allow us to make styling changes in the HTML elements. Then we have defined the style changes inside the brackets. Here what we are doing is we are changing the background color of both the div tags on the button click to orange. So let's save it, and what we'll do is we'll click on this click me button and see if it's working or not. So click on it and you can see the color is orange for both the div tags. You can see it again. We'll refresh this page, click on this click me button, and you can see the color is orange now. Fine. So this is how we can access all the elements from an HTML file using the element name only. It is an alternative to get element by tag name. Fine. Now let's suppose we want to make changes to a particular paragraph. Let's say paragraph 1 only. In JavaScript, we can do it with the help of document.getElementById method. In jQuery, we can also use the ID attribute to do so. So let's suppose we want to change the font style of paragraph 1 only. We want to change it to italic. So we'll do it with the help of jQuery. So what we have to do is we have to provide the paragraph tag and ID first. So we'll move to a HTML file. Here is the HTML file, and this is the paragraph 1. We'll use here ID as P1 for this paragraph. Save it now. And now what we'll do is we'll comment this piece of code and we'll write here again dollar. So we are using the ID attribute, so we have to use hash here. We'll write here p1 dot css is the action name, and inside this we'll write font style, and the font style is going to be italic. Fine. So we have to close this bracket over here, and we have to remove this bracket from here. Fine. The thing to notice here is we have to include the hash symbol before the ID attribute while accessing any particular ID. Save it, go to the browser and click on the button over here, and you can see the font style of the paragraph is changed to italic now. See, the same thing we can do with getElementById method as well. It's straightforward, right? Now, the question is, what if we have two elements with the same ID and we want to change the style of both the elements? In jQuery, it doesn't work in that way. So what we'll do here is we'll move to a HTML file and we'll give this paragraph 3 the same ID. So what we'll do is we'll write here ID as P1, save it now, and let's see if the font style for paragraph 3 changes or not on the button click. So on clicking the button over here, you can see the style does not change. It means that jQuery needs the ID to be unique for each element. Fine. So the other alternative to do so is to use the class attribute in place of ID attribute. We'll do the same thing. Instead of using ID as P1, what we'll do is we'll write here class. So let's say the class name is para for paragraph 1, and for paragraph 3 we'll use the same class name. We'll write here para. Now let's try to access both the elements using jQuery selectors. So we'll move to a JavaScript file again and we'll comment this statement, and over here what we'll do is we'll write here dollar element name. So we have to write here the class name with the dot symbol. Then we'll write here .css, and we'll write here font style as italic. Fine. Now save it. Click on the button over here and you'll be able to witness the change in the web page. So you can see it's not working. We have done something wrong here. So let's check it out once. We haven't saved the HTML file, I guess. So we'll save the HTML file. We'll save the JavaScript file and we'll click on this click me button. You can see the change in the web page now. Now you can see how we are able to make changes in both the paragraphs at the same time. So this is how we can use jQuery selectors. We covered three different types of selectors: the ID, class name, and element name selectors. So let's go through some more types of selectors today. Let me tell you guys what selectors are in jQuery again to revise what we have done till now. Selectors allow us to manipulate or access HTML elements as a group or single element in jQuery based on their name, ID, classes, types, attributes, values, and much more. In simple words, jQuery provides us the flexibility to access any element in different ways. The previous three selectors are easy to understand, and I hope you guys must have gotten the idea of how they actually work in jQuery. If you haven't watched the previous video on jQuery selectors, I recommend you to go through it, as we will be using the same code we have used for those three selectors. So let's start with our first selector of the day. Over here, you can see we have the code from the previous video, wherein we created two different boxes and made some style changes using jQuery selectors and actions. If you see here, we have used jQuery for selectors and we are performing certain actions, right? So if we click on this click me button, you can see the font style changes to italic for both paragraph 1 and paragraph 3. So what we'll do now is we'll add another box here with different content. Like let's say we are adding a list of items or something. So for that, we'll go to our HTML file and we'll write here. After this div tag, we'll create another div tag. So inside this particular div tag, what we are going to do is we are going to provide the ID as, let's say, div3 to this particular div tag. Fine. Now inside here, what we'll do is we'll use the unordered list and then we'll use list element. Fine. So here what we'll do is we'll write item 1 and we'll copy this piece of code and paste it again for 5 times. So let's change the item name to item 2, 3, 4 and 5. Save it and you can see here we have a list of items on our web page. So let's style this div tag as well to look almost the same as the other two containers. So what we'll do is we'll move to our CSS file. We'll copy this piece of code for div1 and we are going to paste it here. Fine. So what we are doing is we are basically using the same code. We are styling the element the same way we did for previous two div tags. Fine. Save it now. And here you can see we have three boxes over here. We have three containers over here. The first two containers contain 4 paragraphs and the last container contains a list of items. Now we are done with both HTML and CSS parts. So let's move on to the jQuery part now. Now let's suppose we want to make changes in the first two containers only, or in any two containers. Let's say we want to change the background color of the first container and the third container to green. And we have used the same class for the first and second container. Let's do one thing. We'll move to HTML file and you can see over here we have the first div tag with class as div with 2 V's, and then we have another div tag with the same class. So the third one does not have any class for that, right? So in that case, we can't use the element name to do so, because if we use the element name for making changes, then those changes will be visible in all the three containers. We can use the class name, but we have used the same class for div1 and div2, so it's impossible. What we can do here is we can use the ID attribute, because we have unique IDs for both the div tags for div1 and div3. Now jQuery allows us to make the same changes in one or more elements using the ID attribute only. So the task is simple. What we have to do is we have to go to a JavaScript file or jQuery file, we can say. We'll comment this statement for now and we'll write here $. and inside brackets we'll pass the ID attribute. So we'll write here div1 comma div2, and we have to put here the hash symbol because it represents the ID of any element. So we'll write here .css, and inside this we'll write background color, and the background color is going to be green. Fine. That's it, guys. What we have to do is we have to separate the IDs with a comma, and we can make changes to several elements at the same time. Save it and click on the button over the browser. So what we'll do is we'll reduce the size a little bit so that both the containers are visible. So you can see the first and the third containers have same colors over here. So let me first change the color of the third container. We'll go here and we'll change the color to, let's say, gray. Fine, save it. And you can see all these three containers has different colors. So what we'll do is we'll save this piece of code and we'll click on this click me button. And you can see the containers with ID 1 and ID 2, the color is changed to green. So what if we want to do the same thing for the third container and the first container? So if we write here div 3 instead of div 2, save it now, click on the button, and you can see the color is changing for both the containers. So it's working totally fine. Not only that, but instead of using multiple IDs, we can also use different attributes at the same time. Like we can use the class name and the element name here as well. So let's say if we write here, let's comment this piece of code as well, and we'll write here in the next line $. Let's suppose we are writing here div1. So this is the ID for the first container. So we are using the hash symbol. So remember it is a ID, and right here we are writing li. So li is the tag name and we are using tag name over here. So what we'll do is we'll write here CSS and then we'll change the background color. And the background color is going to be, let's say, purple. Fine. So we are done with it. Save it and click on the click me button. You can see the color of both the elements changed at the same time. This is one of the reasons to choose jQuery. It provides us the ease to work on multiple attributes at the same time. The color of the first container and the color of the list elements changed simultaneously here. So we can also make changes to the particular element present inside a specific div tag. For example, let's say we have two more paragraphs outside the div tag. So let's add them first, and what we'll do is we'll move to our HTML file. We'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here after the h1 tag. Fine, now what we'll do is we'll change the paragraphs. So let's say the paragraph 1 says this is paragraph 1 outside div tags. Fine, we'll do the same here as well. We'll write here outside div tags. Save it now, and you can see over here we have two paragraphs over here. What we'll do is we'll remove the second container from here. So let's do it and save it now. We'll remove the styling as well for the second container. Save it. Now we have only two containers over here and we have a click me button. Fine. Now what we want is we want to make some changes to the paragraphs present inside the first and the second containers. We can't use the element name because it will make changes in all the paragraph elements. So what we can do here is we can write here, we'll move to our JavaScript file and we'll write here $, and inside this we'll write div greater than sign and we'll write here p. Now we are going to use here fade toggle. So what we did here is we asked jQuery to make changes to the paragraph elements present inside the div tags. We have also used the fade toggle action here to make it more clear to you guys. The syntax is simple. We have to pass the parent element with a greater than sign and then the element name in which we want to make changes. So let's see if this statement is working or not. Save it, move to the browser, click on this click me button, and you can see the paragraph is completely hidden. Right? You guys don't worry about the actions for now because we'll cover them in the upcoming videos. Although they are not complicated, but still if you are thinking about them, then don't worry, we are here to help you with that. This statement can also work without the greater than sign, just like it does in the CSS properties. So let's see if it works or not after removing this greater than sign. Save it now. You can see the paragraphs are here and we want to fade them out on button click. So click on this click me button and you can see it's working totally fine. And if we click on this click me button again, you can see the paragraphs are here. Next up, what if we want to access the first paragraph only? Now we are talking about this particular paragraph. So what if we want to access it? We can't use any of the selectors we have been through till now. It does not have any ID or class, and we can't use the element name because that will make changes in all the paragraph elements. For that, what we have to do is we have to write here dollar, and after it will write p colon first. Fine. Then we'll write here fade toggle and we'll call this function. So we are done with it. This statement will access the first paragraph element from the whole HTML document. Save it, click on the button, and you can see on clicking the button the paragraph 1 is completely hidden. Click on the button again and the paragraph is here again. But will it work the same way if we write second in place of first? Like if we only want to access the second paragraph, not the first one. So let's try doing it and it will be easy for you to understand. So we'll write here second. Now what we want is we want to access this particular paragraph. Save the program, move to browser, click on this click me button and you can see it's not working. You can go through the inspect elements and you'll find an error over here. So if we go to console, you can see it says unsupported pseudo second. So it does not supports this. So we can do it for the first element present in the HTML file only. So we'll write here first again, save it now, and you can see it's working now. We can do the same thing with the class name, ID or the element name. What else we can do here is we can make changes in the odd and even elements as well. So let's suppose we want to hide the list item present at odd numbers. For that, we have to write a simple code. So what we'll do is we'll comment this as well, because if you want to check it later, you can check it from here. That's why we are commenting all the statements. So what we'll do here is we'll write here li and we'll write here after colon even. Fine. Then we'll write here fade toggle. Save it. Click on the button over here. And the list elements present at 0, 2 and 4 are gone because even numbers start from 0. That's why the item 1, 3 and 5 are gone and the item 2 and 4 are present at odd places. Now we can do the same thing for odd elements as well. So for that we have to write here odd in place of even. Save it now. Click on the click me button and you can see the items 2 and 4 are gone now. Of course, they'll reappear on the screen if we click on the button again. That's because of the fade toggle method we have used. We are going to discuss events in jQuery. We'll go through an introduction to events. Then we'll cover some particular type of events in this video as we have completed JavaScript before jQuery. So I hope you guys must know by now the definition of events. So the simple explanation of an event is something that happens. Like when we manipulate an HTML document in JavaScript, we try to do something on the web page, right? Several events take place on a website, like the user hovers over a specific elements or click on an element. Pressing a key in the website can also refer to an event, or submitting a form or playing a video also refers to an event in a website. So this is the basic definition of events. So let's go through an example of JavaScript events and we'll see what they actually are. We'll create a button for calling an event and then we'll do same sort of stuff with jQuery as well. So let's do it with JavaScript first. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll write here, we'll add an image on our browser. So we'll write here img src is equals to images. The image is present inside the images folder and the image name is j1.png. Then we'll write here alt and the alt is going to be JavaScript. Fine. Let's give it an ID as well. So we'll write here ID as img1 for this img tag and then we'll create a button over here. So we'll write here button ID is equals to, let's say, btn, and then we have on click event. So we'll call a function on clicking the button. So we'll write here function func1, and then we'll close this tag. So let's say the name of this button is click. Fine, we are done with it. Save it. So the image is quite large, so what we'll do here is we'll change the size of this image. So we'll write here width is equals to, let's say, 250 pixels. Fine, save it now, and you can see the image size is fine now. So what we did here was a primary task. We have added an image and we are calling a function using the onClick event. It means that if the user clicks on this button, then something will happen, and for now that something depends upon us, and we'll define it after this. So basically something will change in the web page on button click. Fine, so let's define this function now first. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. This is a JavaScript file, and we'll write here function func1. Fine, so we have to define this function. So what we'll do is we'll write here document dot get element by id, and the id of image is image1, I guess. Let's confirm it once. So the id of image tag is img1, and then we'll write here dot style dot width. So let's say we are changing the width of this image on clicking the button. So we'll write here, let's say 500 pixels. Fine, this is the size we want to change. Save it now. That's it. So we are doing all this to give you guys an idea of what events are in jQuery and how they are different from events in JavaScript. So this button click over here is basically an event. If we move to a HTML file and see here, so this on click over here is actually an event, and this event will call function1. So the function1 we have defined in a JavaScript file, and this function1 will change the width of this image. Fine, I hope you guys understood it. So what we'll do now is we'll save this piece of code. We'll go to the browser and click on this button. So click on it, and you can see the image size is large. Fine, you can refresh it, you can click on it, and the image size is large. We can also revert the changes by creating another function here, like we'll write here function func2, and then we'll give the original size, and on clicking another button the image will get back to its original size. So we can do it, but we'll not do it as of now. Now similar events are present in jQuery as well. The events and functioning remain the same. The only thing that changes in jQuery events is the way of calling an event. So the syntax in jQuery goes like this. So what we'll do is we'll remove this onClick button from a HTML file. We'll remove this onClick event from here. And now this button has an ID btn, and it's actually a button. Now what we'll do here is we'll comment this piece of code, because we want you guys to see the difference in both events in JavaScript and jQuery. Now what we'll do is we'll write here dollar. Inside this we'll access a button, so we'll write here button. Button is the element name. We are not using the ID attribute here. Of course we can write here hash btn as well. So we'll write here dot click, and what we'll do is we'll create a function name. So we will write here func1, and the next thing we are going to do here is we are going to create this function. We are going to write here function func1, and the rest of the things will remain the same. So we'll write here dollar, we'll access the image, so we'll write here hash img1, and then we'll write here dot css. We'll pass here width, and the width is going to be 500 pixels. Fine. So we are done with it. This click function over here. So if you see here, you can see this click is a function basically. So this click function over here is actually a predefined function in the jQuery library that will be used to perform a specific task on the web page. Save it. Save the program now. Move to the browser. Click on the button, and you can see the size is changing. We can also use the concept of anonymous function here in place of creating a whole function. Like if we don't want to write here func1 and then we don't want to create another function, what we can do here is we can write here dollar button, and then we'll write here dot click. Inside this we'll write function. This is the body of this function. We'll put semicolon over here, and we'll copy this statement from here. Fine. Now comment this piece of code. And here we have used the concept of anonymous function. Fine. It's quite simple. So save it and click on the button. You can see it's working totally fine. So this was just a tutorial of how we can use events in jQuery. So this is basically an introduction of events. Now next up, we'll be going through an event that we'll be needing every time we are using jQuery. So what we are going to do is we are going to write here dollar and we are going to access document. So this document refers to the whole HTML document, and then we'll write here ready, and then we'll write here a function. So we'll create a body of this function. Now the ready function will be called after the HTML documents is fully loaded. What we want to do is we want to keep the jQuery part in a queue until the document is being loaded. So for example, let's say we have a big website with so many buttons and different things present inside it. Now the button will perform some actions on clicking, right? Let's say the user's internet speed is not adequate and the button loads before anything else on the web page. It will affect us, right? Like if the user presses the button before anything loads in the web page, then there's no way of writing any jQuery for that, right? We can't do anything for that. So what we want is we want the HTML document to be loaded fully before the jQuery part works. So for that we use the ready event. So ready is basically an event in jQuery. So make it a habit of using the ready event, guys. It is considered a good habit by programmers across the world. So what we have to do is we have to put this code in a jQuery part or JavaScript part, and then we have to write anything inside of it. So what we'll do is we'll cut it from here, we'll paste it here, and let's remove this for once. So this is how a JavaScript file will look like after including the ready event in a website. So what we have to do basically is we have to include the ready event in our JavaScript file, and then we have to start writing code for other events as well. We'll cover the remaining events in jQuery and we'll see how they are different from JavaScript events. We have been through certain types of events in the previous part. We have an idea of how to call an event in jQuery and how to use the onClick event to manipulate the HTML element. So we'll use the same code in today's video, as we'll be going through some more types of jQuery events, and you guys will have an idea of several jQuery events by the end of this tutorial. So let's start with the first event of the day. If you guys ever notice that some buttons work on double click only. In JavaScript, we use on double click for such events. Now jQuery also supports such events. So in jQuery, instead of using double click or on double click, what we have to do is we'll go to this code and we'll write here double click only. That's it. So this is the event and this is the function we have created. So what will happen is on double clicking this button, this image size will change to 500 pixels. Rest of the part will remain the same. Now I suggest you guys to watch the previous part because we have been using the same code. So I hope you guys have watched that part before going through this video. So what we did here was we changed the name of click event to double click only, and the rest will remain the same. Now save the program, go to browser and click on this button over here. You can see the button is not working on clicking it. Now double click on it and it's working totally fine, right? So this is how we can use the double click jQuery event. Now the following events we'll cover are the mouse enter and mouse exit events. If you guys remember from the animations in JavaScript video wherein we were changing the animation on mouse over, then you must have noticed that we are using the on mouse over and on mouse out events, right? So the same events with the same task we have in jQuery as well. The names are mouse enter and mouse leave. So here the mouse enter event represents the on mouse over event and the mouse leave event represents the on mouse out event. Now the rest of the things will remain the same. What we'll do here is, let me just remove this piece of code and we'll write this code again. So we'll write here dollar and then we'll access our image. So this is the ID of our image. So we'll write here hash img1 and then we'll write here mouse enter and then we'll create a function over here. So function totally depends upon us. We can create an anonymous function or we can create a separate function as well. So what we'll do here is we'll write here inside this function dollar and we'll again access this image. So we'll write here img1 dot css, and then we'll pass the styles over here. We'll write here width, and we'll change the width of this image to 500 pixels. Fine. Now the next thing we'll do is we'll write the code for mouse leave event as well. So if you save this program for now, and you can go over here on the browser and hover your mouse cursor over the image, you can see the size is changing. Now what we'll do is we'll write the code for mouse leave event as well. So for that we'll write here $, and then we'll access the image again. We'll write here img1 dot mouse leave, and then we'll create a function over here. So we'll write here function, and the function will be responsible for the change in size of this image. So we'll write here $, then we'll again access the image. So we'll write here img1, then we'll write here .css, and then we'll write here width is going to be again to the default ones. So the default width is, I guess, 250 pixels. Let's check it out over here. So if you can see here, the width of this image is 250 pixels, right? So what we'll do is we are done with it. We'll save this program and now go over to the browser. You can see that the image size increases on taking the mouse cursor over it, and the image gets back to its original size on taking the mouse cursor away from it. So simple and so easy, right? Now there exists a common event that can act like both the mouse enter event and the mouse leave event. So the hover event is used to do so. It takes 2 arguments and the rest will remain the same. So what we'll do is we'll comment this piece of code for now, and we'll write an alternate code for this. So we'll write here $, and then we'll access the image. So we'll write here #1, and then we'll write here hover. We'll write here func1 and func2. So these are the 2 functions we are going to create. So next up, let's create these functions. So we'll write here function func1. This is our first function, and then inside this we'll write $. We'll access the image again. So we'll write here img1 dot css dot css. Then we'll write here width, and the width is going to be, let's suppose, 500 pixels for on mouse over event. And then we'll create another function over here. We'll write here function func2. Now inside the body of this function, what we are going to do is we are going to copy this piece of code from here, and then we'll paste it here. Fine. Now instead of 500 pixel, we want the image to get back to its original form. So we'll write here 250 pixels only. So here we are done with the programming part. Now save this program, and you can see it over here that we have the exact same functionality like that of mouse enter and mouse leave events. So the hover event works almost the same. We'll look at different effects present in jQuery, and we'll see how easy it is to use those effects. Let's start this video with a simple definition of effects. In layman terms, an effect refers to an event, condition, or state of affairs produced by a cause. For example, we click on a button on the website and suddenly the image disappears. This refers to the fade in effect, and then we click on another button and the image is back, the fade out effect, right? We have been through such effects and animations previously in the JavaScript part as well. If you guys remember, we have the zoom in and zoom out effects as well, wherein we were clicking on a button and the size of the image changes to large, and all of that stuff refers to effects and animations. I hope you guys must have got an idea about what we'll be doing in this particular video. First of all, we'll add an image to our HTML file, and then we'll use different effects on that particular image. The task is straightforward, right? So let's move on to the programming part directly. Now let's add an image over here on the browser first. We can create a container as well, but let's do it with images only for now because it will be easy and more understanding for you guys. So we'll go through the hide and show effect first. So we'll add an image and 3 buttons to our web page. One for hiding, another one for showing, and the last one for both. So you'll understand it much better while working on them. So let's add the image and buttons over here. We'll write here img, src is going to be images slash j1.png. Then we'll write here alt as JavaScript. So this is a basic image we have in a images folder. We'll write here id as img1 for this image, and the width is, let's say, 250 pixels for this image. Fine. Save this program and you can see the image over here on the browser. Now the next thing we are going to do is we are going to add buttons as well. So we'll write here button, and let's say the ID of this button is going to be btn1 for button 1. We'll write here height, then we'll copy this statement from here and we'll paste it 3 times. The button ID is going to be 2 and 3, and the button name is going to be show, and let's say the last button name is toggle. Fine. So here we have an image over here and 3 buttons for different tasks. What we want is we want to hide the image by clicking on the hide button, and we want the image to get back on the web page by clicking on the show button. Fine. So what we'll do here is we'll use the br tag as well. So we'll write here br twice, and here you can see we have 3 buttons over here. Let me zoom it out a bit. So we have 3 buttons over here: hide, show, and toggle. So these 3 buttons have 3 different IDs, btn1, 2, and 3, and we have an image over here. Fine. Now let's move on to the jQuery part and we'll see how easy it is to perform such tasks in jQuery. So here's a JavaScript file and we have the ready function over here already. So we'll write a code inside this particular event only. Now what we'll do is we'll write here $, and then we'll write here button 1. We'll access this button with ID btn1. Then we'll write here click is the event, and we'll write here function, and the function is going to be an anonymous function. Fine. Next up we'll write here $. Then we'll access the image with ID as img1. Then we'll write here .hide, and that's it. So what we did here was easy. We used the click event and the hide effect. Hide here is actually a predefined function in jQuery that will make the desired element completely hidden from the web page. So let's check the output for this code first. Save the program, move to the browser, and click on the hide button over here. So you can see the image is completely gone from the web page. It's not present here anymore. And you guys can see how easy it is to perform such tasks in jQuery because we have a predefined function already present in our jQuery file. Isn't it great? We don't have to write long code for a small task, right? All we need to do is to write a single line of code and we are good. Fine. So let's write the same code for the show button as well. Now we need to access the button with ID as btn2 and the action will change to show. So what we'll do here is we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here again. Now the next thing we'll be doing here is we'll be changing the ID to btn2 and the hide function will change to show here. Fine. Now save the program, move to the browser, and you can see we have both the buttons working over here. If we click on this hide button, the image is hidden, and if we click on this show button, you can see the image is here again. So these 2 buttons are working totally fine. You can see if we click on the show button, the image is back here again. Now if we want this task to be performed after 2 seconds, let's say, we can say we want the image to take 2 seconds to hide, and we know that in JavaScript we can use the set time interval method or the set timeout method, something like that. But in jQuery we have an easy alternative for this. So what we have to do is we have to write here inside this hide action, we'll write here 2000. Similarly, we'll do the same thing for show as well. We'll write here 2000. Now 2000 here refers to 2 seconds. Fine. Save the program. Click on the hide button now, and you can see the image is taking 2 seconds to get completely hidden. Similar thing will happen with the show button as well. If we click on the show button, you can see the image takes 2 seconds for that as well. So it's working totally fine. Right. It seems like the fade in and fade out effects, but there is a difference between this effect and the fade in and fade out effect. We'll go through it in a moment. For now, what we'll do is we'll add functionality to this toggle button over here. Now this toggle button over here has the capability to perform both tasks using a single button. What I mean by that is we don't have to create two separate buttons for hiding and showing the image. What we can do is we can also use a single button for this task. So let's add functionality to this button first. And for that, we'll write here $. The ID for this toggle button is #btn3. Then we'll write here .click, and we are going to create an anonymous function. Now inside the body of this function, we'll again access the image. So we'll write here #img1. Then we'll write here .toggle. Fine. Let's change the timing here. Let's say we want this to take 3 seconds on using the toggle button. Now save this program, click on the hide and show button, and you can see they are taking 2 seconds to complete the task, right? 2 seconds to hide the image and 2 seconds to show the image again. Now the toggle button will work differently. What the toggle button will do is on clicking the toggle button, it will take 3 seconds to hide the image. And if we click on this button again, you can see after 3 seconds, the image is back here again. Fine. The toggle function over here is written in such a way that it can perform the tasks of both the hide and the show functions. The time we mentioned here totally depends upon us. So we can either use it or we can leave it as well. Now moving ahead, we have another type of effect present in jQuery, which acts almost the same as the hide and show functions, but the animations is slightly different. So we are talking about the fade in and the fade out effects in jQuery. We'll go through them now and we'll see the difference between hide, show, toggle and fade in, fade out and fade toggle. Fine. So what we'll do is we'll add 3 more buttons in a HTML file so that we can witness the difference between all of them. So what we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here. We'll paste it here and we'll write here the button ID is 4, 5 and 6. Now the button names are going to be fade in, and the second button is going to be fade out, and the last one is going to be fade toggle. Fine. Save the program and you can see we have 3 more buttons over here. Now you guys will get confused, but don't worry about it. It's an easy task. So what we'll do now is we'll use jQuery for fading in and out this particular image. Now the syntax will remain the same. So we'll move to a JavaScript file. And now what we'll do is we'll access button 4, 5 and 6, which are fade in, fade out and fade toggle. So we'll write here #btn4 for the fade in button. So we'll write here .click, and on clicking we'll call an anonymous function again, and then we'll access the image over here. So the image ID is img1. Then we'll write here .fade in and we'll pass the timestamp as well. So let's say the timestamp is 2000 for this fade in function. Fine. Now we'll do the same for fade out as well. So we'll copy this from here, we'll paste it here. The button ID is going to be 5, and instead of fade in we have fade out over here. Fine. So we have to write here fade out with a capital O and fade in with a capital I. Now we have written the code for both fade in and fade out buttons here so that it will not create any sort of confusion for you guys. The fade out effect works the same as the hide effect, and the fade in effect works the same way as the show effect. Fine. So save this piece of code, click on hide, and you can see these functions are working totally fine. The hide and show buttons are working totally fine. Now click on this fade out button and you can see the image fading out in 2 seconds. Click on the fade in button and the image is here back again after 2 seconds. So these 2 buttons are working totally fine. The fade toggle effect, the last button over here, we'll write the code for this button as well. So this fade toggle effect in jQuery acts the same as the toggle effect. It can work like the fade in and the fade out button. So let's write the code for that as well. What we'll do is we'll copy this piece of code from here and we'll paste it here. The button ID is 6, and instead of fade out, we'll write here fade toggle. Fine. Now save this program, and you can see the button over here is working totally fine. On clicking fade toggle, the image fades away after 2 seconds, or we can say it's taking 2 seconds to fade away. And on clicking this fade toggle button again, you can see the image is here again. We can see the difference here as well between the hide, show and fade in, fade out effects. The fade effect is different from the other effect. The syntax although seems to be the same, and no significant differences in the syntax and the working. The only different thing is the way of achieving the desired effect. You can see the difference by clicking the button. You can see on clicking the hide effect, the animation is different from that in fade in or fade out effect. You can see there is a difference of animations only. Now let's move ahead and talk about another effect in jQuery. The upcoming effect we'll discuss is the slide effect. The syntax is same, so let's go through the slide effect quickly. Now what we'll do is we'll add 3 buttons and we'll discuss the slide effect. Fine, so what we'll do here is let's remove these buttons, and okay, so let's do one thing. Let's remove these 3 buttons and we'll write here ID is 7, 8 and 9. Fine. And then we'll change the name of these buttons. So we'll write here slide up, slide down, and let's say slide toggle. Fine. Now I hope you guys must have understood the working of slide toggle by now. It will work in both ways. It will make the image slide up and slide down at the same time by using a single button. So don't worry about it. We'll remove these BR tags from here and we'll paste them here. Save this program now, and we have 3 buttons over here: slide up, slide down and slide toggle. Now what we'll do is we'll remove this piece of code as well. I hope you guys must have got it by now. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to write the code for slide effect. Fine. The syntax remains the same, so we'll write here $. The button ID is going to be btn7 for slide button. For slide up button, we'll write here the click event and we'll create a function over here. Fine. The task will remain the same. We'll write here again img1. We'll access this particular image and we'll write here slide up. We want this image to take 2 seconds to slide up, so we'll write here 2000 as the timestamp. Now save this program and click on the slide up button over here. You can see the image sliding in the upward direction. Right. Now what we'll do is we'll write the code for slide down and slide toggle as well. So we'll write here button 8 for slide down. We'll write here slide down instead of slide up, and we'll write here slide toggle. Fine. We'll write here btn9 for slide toggle. Save the program, and you can see on the browser that all the buttons are working totally fine. If we click on slide up button, the slide up button is working fine. The slide down button is also working fine, and if we click on the slide toggle button, you can see the image is sliding up and down as well. So before wrapping up this video now, let me tell you guys about the stop method as well. So what we'll do is we'll add another stop button on our web page. We'll move to a HTML file. We'll copy this particular statement from here. We'll change the name of this button to stop, and the button ID is going to be btn10. Fine. Save this program now. We'll move to a JavaScript file and we'll write here $. We'll access this stop button, so we'll write here hash btn10 dot click, and we'll create a function over here. Now inside this function we'll write hash img1. We'll access this image and then we'll write here dot stop. So we are calling a function over here. So stop is a function basically. Now save the program and move to the browser. Now you can see if we click on this stop button when the effect is taking place. So if we click on this slide up button and then in between we click on this stop button, you can see the difference over here. We can slide down the image from here and we can do the same thing with the stop button. So what stop button is doing is it stops the effect in between, right? You can see all the buttons over here are working totally fine, and we can stop this effect in between, right? So this is why we use jQuery for such tedious tasks. A single line of code can do it so quickly and so easily, right? So these are some of the significant effects we have in jQuery, and they are pretty easy to use as well. We are going to discuss the jQuery animate effect. We discussed jQuery effects and we know how to use certain effects like fade in, fade out and the scroll up, scroll down effect to make changes in our HTML documents. Today, we'll take a look at the jQuery animate effect in particular. Here's the code from the last part wherein we use the scroll effect in an image. The image slides up on clicking the slide up button and the image slides down on clicking the slide down button. We can also stop the sliding effect in between by clicking on this stop button as well. So far, we have been using these effects to make our web pages more interactive, right? Now, this animate effect we'll use in today's video is a bit different from these effects. The animate effect uses CSS properties and it can be used to make an image or an object like a rectangle or something move across the web page in a particular manner. Seems confusing, right? So let's start writing the code and everything will be clear to you guys. We'll be using an image for this task. So let's remove all this code from here first. We'll write the code again. Now we'll remove this code from here and we'll write the code again. So let's add the image over here and then we'll style that image using the style tag only. So we'll write here div. We'll be using a container for this. Inside this we'll write img. Now src is going to be images slash j1.png. So we'll be using the same image for this task. Then we'll write here alt. So let's say we are writing here something and then we'll write here id as img, let's say. Fine. Let's close this image tag, save the program now, and you can see the image over here. The image size is quite large. We can reduce the size of a Chrome browser. So you can see this is the image. Now what we'll do next is we'll style this image using the style tag. So let's style this image as well here. We'll move to a head tag and we'll write here style. Fine. Now inside the style tag we'll access this image using the image ID. So ID for this image is img. We'll write here hash img and then inside this we'll write some properties over here. So let's define the height of this image first. Let's say the height is going to be 250 pixels. Then we'll write here width as well. So let's say the width is again 250 pixels and we'll use opacity over here. Fine. We'll write here opacity is equals to, let's say, 0.4. We'll discuss it later why we are using opacity here. Now the last thing we are going to do is we are going to write here position as absolute. So opacity here will define the fading effect of this image. Save this program and you can see it here on the browser. We have a picture with an opacity of 0.4. It's obviously different from the actual image. Let's increase the size of this image for now. So here's the image. Now the next thing we'll be doing is we'll be adding a button over here to call the animate effect. For that we'll write here after this button and the button ID is going to be, let's say, btn. Then we'll write here the name of our button is, let's say, animate. Save this piece of code and you can see we have the animate button over here. We'll use the br tag to create some distance between the button and the image. So save this program and you can see over here that we have a button and an image. Now we'll use the animate effect to make this picture move across the browser, or we can say across the container. So we'll use the click event for the animate button. Now let's move on to the jQuery part. Here we are in the jQuery part. We'll remove this piece of code and now we'll try to access this animate button using the button ID. Fine. So for that we'll write here $. Inside this we'll write hash btn. So this is our button ID and then we'll write here dot click. We are going to use the click event over here. Then we'll create an anonymous function. This task is easy and here we are. We have used the click event here. So the next thing we'll be doing is to use the animate effect now. So for that, we'll write here $. Now we are going to use this animate effect over our image. So the image ID is img, and then we'll write here dot animate, and we'll leave it for now. Now this animate effect over here has three different parameters. The first one are going to be the CSS properties, the style changes we are going to create on a picture. So we'll write those changes inside the curly braces. The second parameter is the timestamp, and let's say we are using 2000 over here. So 2000 over here is the milliseconds. Now the third parameter, which is the callback, we'll be discussing callback in the upcoming videos. For now, we'll use these two parameters only. Now let's move ahead and we'll write the CSS properties here inside these curly braces. So we'll write over here, let's say we are writing here left, and we'll write here left as 150 pixels. Fine. Now this left property over here will take the image 150 pixels away from the left side of the container. So save this program, and now you can witness the changes on this web page. Click on the animate button, and you can see the image slides over to the right corner. The animation takes 2 seconds to complete because we have given the timestamp here as 2000 milliseconds. Let's reduce the size of this Chrome browser a bit, and now you can see it properly. Refresh the page, and we'll click on this animate button, and you can see the image slides over. The effect is working fine. Let's make some more changes to this image style by clicking the animate button. All we have to do is to add some more CSS properties to this animate effect, and for that we'll write here some more properties with the help of commas only. So we'll put a comma over here, and we'll write here, let's say, opacity. So we'll change the opacity of this image to 1. Then we'll again use the comma and change the height and width as well. So let's say the height is going to be 400 pixels, and then we'll write here width as well. Fine. So width is going to be again 400 pixels. So we are done with it. Now the height and width of this image will change to 400 pixels along with the opacity changing to 1. It means that the image will be completely opaque after clicking on the animate button. Save this program now and move to the browser. Click on the animate button here to see the magic now. You can see the size of the image increasing gradually here in 2 seconds. However, this animate method does not have any toggle function though. So we can't retrieve the changes just by clicking on the button again. Let me reduce the size a bit more so that it will be easy for you guys to understand this effect. Here we are, we have this effect. Click on the animate button and you can see the change now. From opacity as 0.4 to opacity as 1. There are some changes in the animations, right? So this is what animate effect does in jQuery. Now instead of writing here 2000, what we can do is we can write here slow or fast. So let's try doing it as well. What we'll do is we'll write here instead of 2000, we'll write here slow for now. So we'll write here slow, save this program, click on the animate button again, and you can see the change. So it's not taking 2 seconds anymore. Now the slow keyword will work and the animation effect will change. Fine. And with that, we come to the end of this jQuery basics tutorial. If you enjoyed watching the video, do give it a thumbs up, comment your doubts below, and our experts will answer them for you. Thank you so much for being here. Watch out for more videos from us. Until then, keep learning and stay tuned to Simplilearn.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.